Hi, folks, and welcome. Hi, folks, and welcome to Gersnet, the Independent Rangers podcast made by fans for fans, where all your content is a bit stuttering and absolutely free. Coming to you in association with Forest Precision Engineering. My name's Alec Anderson. I'll be your host this evening as we preview tomorrow's final Old Firm game of the season at Ibrox, Guards of Honour and all. This is episode 266 of the Gersnet podcast, going out live on our YouTube channel. But if you're currently watching the far more significant of this weekend's Glasgow derbies in BBC Scotland, last I saw it, Partick Thistle were in the driving seat. You can get the recording of this show at any time on YouTube, and from tomorrow it should be available on whichever platform provides your pods, be that Acast, iTunes, Castbox, Stitcher, or Spotify. If you're joining us live, you can give us your opinions in the YouTube live comments section, and please do swear and be as abusive as possible, because Frankie's moderating the comments. We like to see him getting a bit of a sweat on there. Also, don't forget, we've got a swish new updated gersnet.co.uk website, complete with our friendly discussion forum and a wealth of articles from our contributors. And that includes the highly impressive History Archive, which has just been toupeed over from the old version of the site to the new one. Hit the thumbs up icon, folks, would you please? And just let your pals know that we're here. Before I bring in the very special and very patient guest for this evening, I'd like to mention our very special and very kind sponsors. Forest Precision Engineering, established in 1983, is a leading precision engineering and special purpose machinery manufacturer. Based in Glasgow, their services in precision engineering are available to companies all over Scotland and throughout the UK. The leading manufacturers of special purpose machinery for a range of applications. Their website is at forestprecisionengineering.com. The big friends of Rangers, and they have a stunning new hospital here in the Irish space. For information how to book the Forest Precision Executive Lounge, unique and intimate space, email the club via hospitality@rangers.com. Now, time to introduce my special guest, Stewart Weir, listing all those Acast, Stitcher. I don't know what half of them are. I think this is Frankie. I think this is the old guy equivalent of, we send the apprentice for a tin of elbow grease and then there's some tartan paint. I think he's just making up these names for me to read out, and just tell him you can get it on Yip Yap and Crocodile. Alec, tell him to look at it on Smarty Pants. Does that sound right to you?
It does, yeah. I think next thing you'll be asking you to nip down to B&Q for some bubbles for your spirit level.
A long stand.
That's it. Tartan paint. It's all there. All the old ones are the best.
That's it. For me, it's like, do like kind of collating stuff in the photocopier with the staple in it? That's the kind of a bit of letraset. That's how we used to distribute kind of the patter. Listen, Stuart, last time you and myself were on the pod together, we discussed I think our favourite schools of opera. I think it was Sturm and Drang and Bel Canto, and we get into the strategies and weaponry of 1960s Middle Eastern conflicts. So my first question to you tonight would be, what do you think is the most kind of highbrow and deeply intellectual topic for us to dissect? I've got Fermat's last theorem. We could get the calculators out for that. Wittgenstein's Tractatus Logico Philosophicus. He thought that solved all philosophy. We could prove that or disprove it. Or are we going to try and explain how Rangers are finally going to beat Celtic this season?
I think the first two are actually easier options than the third one you just gave me there. So I'll stick to the easier ones. No, I mean, listen, since the Cup semi-final, there has been an end-of-season feel to a great many things. And that even goes down, I would have to say, to people trying to predict the starting 11 for this final Old Firm game of the season, and you can see halfway through people have lost interest because they're almost like they can't quite make up who's actually still in favour, who's injured, who has just been parked or benched because they'll never be utilised again, and whether the team that turned out last week was actually a forerunner of the starting 11 for the rest of the season or the remainder of the season. So I think, let's be honest here, this is last chance saloon for maybe a number of Rangers players, either to have a future at Ibrox or to get any kind of result against Celtic. I've, without falling out with any of my Celtic friends, I think even they realise or accept that this is a good Celtic team who do a number of things well, namely play for 50 minutes in the first half and play for 90 minutes overall plus any stoppage time. And I think that's got them several results this season that were kind of unexpected, whereas their counterparts, at Ibrox just have not done that. So even getting into this last game of the season, for me, you'd be looking for an improvement on the absolute basics. There'd be no hint or suggestion of that this far into the season or in any of the previous Old Firm games. Okay, people will say Rangers had the better of the first half in the semi-final. Football is not governed by artistic impression or degrees of difficulty. There's a thing at either end called a goal or a rigging, whatever you want to describe it. And it's about putting the ball in that. And if you put the ball in there more often than the opposition, you win games. And until such times as Rangers do that, whether it's tomorrow or we're starting into next season again, then they will always come second best. And I think, I think they have been second best on a great many fronts this season to what I would describe as a good Celtic team, not a great Celtic side by any. I fell out with any, I created friendships I never actually knew I had. I wrote in the Herald about 6 years ago that the all-conquering Brendan Rodgers side wasn't even in the top 5 Celtic teams that I had seen. They were lucky if they're maybe 7th or 8th. Now, I don't want to say where Ange Postecoglou's team is, because I might get the same Christmas cards. But the fact of the matter is that they have accomplished a great haul this season in terms of victories and in terms of trophies by doing simple things. And it would be nice to see a Rangers team counter that by similarly doing simple things, not making mistakes, and being wise to the event and what's going on round about them.
Absolutely. I feel as if I've been watching since Beale's arrived. That's 4 Old Firm games I've watched. And like you're saying, it looks like you're just thinking, if you just cut that out, mistakes are so wildly stupid that you're thinking that's not going to happen again. And it doesn't happen again exactly the same way, but it is an equally wildly stupid mistake in every game we play them. And that leads you to believe, you're certainly thinking, yeah, we're not that far away. We're getting closer, if you like, even in these games. But then I can start hearing myself being like Mark Lawrenson when he used to talk about the Germans. The kind of more English, the more Preston and Gillingham side of Mark Lawrenson than his Republic of Ireland caps would suggest when he was, the lucky Germans. And you think, when a team consistently wins on penalties and gets to major, international finals, it's no luck. They're disproving that. And I have to look at that with Rangers and just say to myself, well, it's 4 games you haven't won. That's not an accident. It's
the Gary Player line, isn't it? The more I practice, the luckier I get.
Aye.
And it's taking all possible errors out of your game and keeping it absolutely simple. And, you see that so often. I mean, not going off at a tangent, but even saw that, Leeds United against Manchester City last week. Leeds United cut out all the crap and City couldn't break them down. Okay, they won 2-1, but Leeds could have quite easily come in back into that game late on and snatch something. Undeservedly, I would have to say, but that's the nature of football. It doesn't, it only takes you 30 seconds to score a goal and then kick off again and go to the other end and score another goal. So it's a pretty simple premise, but I think I'm not quite sure where Michael Beale is at in terms of getting his message over, because I would have thought by now he would have ironed out some of the faults and failings that you've seen in this Rangers side.
I think, on Gersnet, we're going to do a proper end of season review, obviously, at the end of the month. And later tonight, we'll discuss what tomorrow's result, what kind of effect that's going to have and how this season is going to be regarded. But last Sunday, Stewart, unfortunately, we did actually, officially it was over. The Celtic won the league last Sunday while we're all sitting at Ibrox watching us struggling against Aberdeen. That means Rangers will officially finish the season trophyless. What were, apart from the disappointment, what were your kind of initial feelings and emotions last Sunday once it was kind of officially wrapped up?
Inevitability.
Aye.
And something, to be absolutely honest, Alex, that you could see coming months ago. I mean, I would even say it was something you could say was you were on course for going back as far as like last October, November time. There just seemed to be to win things, you need an edge. You need some kind of angle that will give you an advantage. And I just don't think that Rangers have had enough of that. If you look at other sides or other, let's focus on other Rangers teams. There isn't, and I'll say again here, and I maybe get it across the bottom of the screen. I am not comparing like for like here, but if you look at past Rangers teams, you could literally say Rangers are relying on A, B, C, or X, Y, and Z, and you knew these guys would perform. The problem with the current Rangers side is there is no one that you're utterly reliant on because you just don't know who's going to perform. Other than Tavernier's consistency, perhaps, you cannot say, well, Tillman is going to be the match winner in this game because he may not do anything for an hour. You cannot say, and you're not being able to say for some considerable time that you're relying on Morelos because you just don't know what kind of player is going to turn up or whether he's going to be even selected or asked if he does turn up. Kent, the exact same. So I think Rangers have done well to last as long as they have in this particular title race. But it's not because they've had any sort of collective of guys punching above their weight or even punching their weight. It's been in dribs and drabs. It's been sporadic at best, and I think you need some sort of level of a greater level of consistency amongst a greater number of players.
No, I had a couple of horrible feelings. A couple of horrible admissions to myself. I was, like a lot of us, I was just kind of almost, never want to say you're glad that Celtic had won a match, but it was like that it wasn't coming to Ibrox. And the thing with that was if Celtic had lost to Hearts, for example, it would have meant they hadn't won like two league games in the trot and they drew at home in Motherwell and kind of slightly struggling against us in the Cup semi-final comparatively in between times. You're thinking they come to Ibrox, it's going to... You'd think we'd have about us to raise our game to do that, to stop them win the league at Ibrox. We have a different scenario altogether from when they came in 2012 to try and do the same. I felt there was a meekness about us that wouldn't have allowed that you could have seen Celtic actually winning the title at Ibrox. That was a terrible thing to think, But do you think? I mean, you're going back to think that the achievement of the season obviously is qualifying for the Champions League. But I think we forget how at the end of last season, when we didn't win the Europa League final, the disappointment at that was kind of framed immediately as this means we haven't qualified for the Champions League again, directly into the group stages. And I think when we got into the group stages, we took such a record-busting pounding that a lot of people want to forget it was an achievement to get in the group stages. But is this season just like basically a total disaster, or is it a kind of natural part of an ongoing recovery from 2012?
Rangers can be better. They can be much better. I mean, I think everybody's agreed in that. But the circumstances by which you enter the Champions League is, I'm not saying you go and hire an open-top bus for qualifying for the Champions League. But when you compare or try and compare like with like, you look at the disadvantages that Scottish clubs have, primarily in terms of the finances available to them. Especially when you don't know where some of the finances have gone. But I think that part of it is that you have to be realistic. Some of us who were very focused on Rangers in what they did in European competition in the likes 30 years ago, the not only the goalposts moved and the rules changed, we've gone from, colour television to black and white drawings compared now. I mean, that's the stark reality of it. You cannot get too carried away. I mean, qualifying and being there is an achievement, whereas go back 30 years just now, you are looking at Rangers missing out by a goal or a point from actually reaching the Champions League final itself. So that was then. Now's a very different story, and I think there has to be it's difficult to congratulate yourself or anybody else when you actually see what a dire performance you then put up. It's like like a heavyweight boxer. Why train for 12 years and take a million punches in training when you go out against a champion and basically the first time he wafts at you, you fall over and you're counted out? And that is a level of where Rangers were this season in terms of the Champions League.
Aye, it was. I think I ended up thinking to myself, well, you look at likes of Manchester City and PSG, who have basically, I was talking about this in the post-match reaction last week, trying to assess where the season had gone wrong. And I think the compressed nature of the Champions League group stage this season because of the World Cup meant that it was a kind of two-pronged attack on Rangers. Obviously, as you say, these teams like Man City and PSG, they can't win the thing. They've been trying for years to actually win it, with more money getting thrown at them than any other teams have had thrown at them in history. And I think they've reached one final each, and the two of them have lost them. So, comparatively, take it down the line, Rangers, in the fourth tier, just a few years back, and suddenly to try and get into that competition, to get thrown into the deep end there, and it's a compressed competition which is ruthless, and really destructive on your kind of limited squad. It's just going to knock you sideways. And I think but I feel as if we did the same when we got to our first major cup final after 2012. It was a bit of disaster against Hibs when we got into Europe for the first time at all after 2012. Against Progress Niederkorn put us out as a bit of a disaster, but we then quickly end up at the stage where we're reaching a European final. So I'm just hoping it's one of those ones we need to get it under the belt. It's almost bound to be brutal, as you say, kind of heavyweight boxing style. But it's worth doing, and maybe we'll look back on it in a few years' time and say it was a great achievement. But I don't think there's any feeling that this season's been any kind of achievement, I'm afraid. And talking of kind of tiresome, depressing stuff, the Guard of Honour, that's been rearing its kind of small-minded head again this week. Celtic are the champions. There's a tradition in football where champions will come out onto the pitch, and if the team that they're playing against will form a Guard of Honour. You're a big rugby man, Stuart. It's a big thing in rugby union, kind of going off the pitch in particular. There's a lot of talk about this tomorrow. Todd Cantwell was asked about in today's presser if we're going to provide a Guard of Honour for Celtic tomorrow, and both Beale and Cantwell both kind of said no, basically on the basis that Celtic hadn't provided one for us when we won 55 in 2021. Postecoglou, he kind of talked it down as well, and I was just thinking this is a lot of nonsense. He said both teams have got enough respect for each other without that. And then he just threw in the word grudging. And I think he just meant both teams have got grudging respect for each other because that's how football works. But straight away, I was up my haunches to see. I mean, we grudge them respect, and straight away they have that kind of old firm bit that's in you. Is it one of those things where is it just a kind of tiresome distraction? Is it a media created sideshow? Or the Rangers actually, when you think about it, did we lose a bit of honour by not giving them that respect?
I think it's. Somebody said it was. I heard it today. It was tit for tat. For me, it's actually tit for tit. What I mean? If it was something that was, if you like, traditional. But I think that there are so many times that you've kind of fallen between two stools or fallen through the cracks in these things that something should have happened that hasn't happened. I'm all for it. If it's a testimonial game, fine. Rugby's entirely different. You applaud the opposition off the pitch at the end of the game. Every game, regardless of what's happened to you. You don't get that in football. You might have hearty handshakes and the likes, but that's about it. So I have never I mean, I'm maybe a bit of an oddity here. I've never get too upset or aggravated or whatever you want to describe it in terms of somebody not giving a team a guard of honour. It's like, for me, it's like national anthems. Why the hell do you play them for other people to jeer your national anthem? Why the hell do you play them? I don't know anybody. I can honestly say I don't know. I know athletes who have become very emotional after they've won something when they've heard the national anthem played, and some have been surprised by that. You know, it's suddenly as a wave that comes over them. But actually, to be inspired by singing something ahead of a game, no. You know, players would quite happily run out the tunnel and just kick off and get on with it, rather than all this sort of, you know, pleasantries at the start of a game. And I just think this is it's a sideshow that it's quite easy to make something of when you are possibly a media outlet struggling to attract either viewers or a readership. You can make something out of this and it's like, you know, woe is me, whereas so many people don't really care about it.
I think niceties are a thing you can't really insist on. You know, it's something that happens or it doesn't. And the only thing I would say, like, playing devil's advocate, you know, I know myself, the kind of Celtic attitude towards Rangers post kind of Peter Lawwell's arrival back 20 odd years ago, I think it's been kind of disgusting at times, refusing to use our name and, you know, refusing to use the phrase old firm and whatever in the kind of official club publications, but censuring employees who do. You know, I was quite funny. I thought Michael Beale today, I heard him saying that the league, you know, congratulations to Celtic, the league table doesn't lie. You know, they're definitely the best team. And I thought, well, we're told it lies when we're top of it. You know, apparently it's because there's no crowds and blah, blah, blah. Their attitude to us has been pretty horrendous coming from Law, from an executive level, from an official level. Would it actually be healthier? Maybe the toxicity off the park seems to be building up. A lot of nasty stuff online and what have you, a lot of nasty stuff between the supporters. Would it be, from a kind of a socially responsible point of view, better for Rangers to be the bigger team, you know, just to go out there and just, you know, show them a bit of respect tomorrow? Or are Rangers actually going to encourage trouble at Ibrox if we were to show them a guard of honour?
I've always been a kind of advocate of taking the moral high ground in these kind of things. And it would, if Rangers were to do it, that would be it. That would be the argument silenced forever.
Yeah.
If you didn't then get it back in response at some point in time, you'd be able to point the fickle finger of fate and say, aha, look at you, you've been found out. You know, the thing is, Alex, and I say this with many years of experience, the bam-pottery that surrounds supporting football clubs. I mean, I am, you know, on the 10th of July 1989, Rangers signed Maurice Johnson. And living as I did in Larkhall at the time, I witnessed sights, you know, somebody with a statue of King Billy and putting it at the cross in the middle of the road and not allowing any traffic to go through. I mean, it's like, wait a minute, and all of a sudden you're going to hand in, you know, Rangers have just won the league title. They're qualified for the Champions League, and you're going to hand in your season ticket because Rangers signed somebody that you disagree with. So let's not just think this is canted from one side. You know, it's something that's widely spread in terms of this fixture and in terms of this rivalry and all the rest of it. So yeah, go ahead and you know, and meet it head on. The difficulty is, I would say, Alex, is that if Rangers were in the semi-finals of a European competition, or they were in the final of the Scottish Cup, or they'd won the League Cup, or they had a very successful European run, or whatever it was, or they pushed Celtic right up until last week and they'd only missed out on the title by a point, then you could carry that off. But Rangers are trying to take the moral high ground from a position of weakness. They don't have many tanks. They don't have much firepower anywhere. So I think at that point in time, you can have, you know, there's a time and a place for it. I don't think this is the time and the place to be convincing fans that this is a very good thing that we have done, because, as I say, we've gone above and beyond on this kind of thing when too many fans are interested in what's happening on the pitch, and will knock you flat on your back if you try to put that argument up, because you just had to perform this season.
Well, I saw Manchester City giving Erling Haaland a guard of honour off the pitch after he broke that Premier League scoring record. So maybe if we did that, we Celtic would stop them scoring. But that's maybe getting a bit desperate. Get them pumped and give them a sarcastic guard of honour going off.
Yeah, maybe applaud a few Rangers defenders out of the building and see if that works.
We're getting desperate. And Tom, I wish the season's over in terms of trophies, as we're saying, but the wheel of the transfer rumour mill was threatening to spin off its axis. Stuart Beale today confirmed that was a whole batch of players will be leaving. The announcement about that and the confirmation of the exact number of players leaving would come sometime after tomorrow's game. The consensus is that there needs to be a clear out. Fans seem to think that the place is kind of full of deadwood. Do we really only have like 4 or 5 players who are kind of guaranteed to be here next season? And who would you say that they are?
That many? I mean,
I'm trying to be upbeat here.
Sorry. The trafficking in human organs, it was banned many years ago, and there are some, you basically said, what am I bid here for these 2 kidneys? What am I bid here for these retinas? Deadwood is, it's a way of summing up a malaise at Ibrox. It's a way of basically categorising or cataloguing the mediocrity that surrounds the club just now, in so many ways, but particularly in the playing front. And I think when you see certain names being leaked that they're interested, for instance, Sterling at Chelsea, I think when you see that, it's no Raheem Sterling anyway. You need to sell off another couple of stands to be able to buy him for a week. But anyway, I think when you see names like that, you're suddenly kind of wary that is this going to apply beyond even some of the names you would think are in with the bricks, so to speak. That would make me a direct opponent for selection, rather than Tavernier. Does it mean that Tavernier, somebody's going to come in with an offer for him and they're going to take what they can get for him? Because I again, on a personal level, I would say he has done really, really well. I still don't think he can defend, but as a kind of an attacking option, as a creator, as a goal scorer, he has done fantastically well as a Rangers player. As a captain, I would have forget a statue outside Ibrox, I would have a very, very large question mark, because but then again, you can't point the finger at him when there's other people in the team not supporting him or not coming up to scratch. So I think there's maybe half a dozen in that kind of first team squad who you could say will still be there, and everybody else, there's either a price tag around their big toe, or there's a for sale sticker on their back, and it might surprise some people actually who might be on the way out, just to make space for some other people to come in. There is no infinite amount of money in terms of what they might spend in contracts and all the rest of it. So you literally have to see people off the premises to earn yourself enough capital to actually go and invest it elsewhere. And I think, like so many other clubs over the years, Rangers are at a point in time where that's going to be difficult. I mean, you're of a certain vintage, as I am. There's a bit of this Rangers side currently, and feel free to disagree or not, but there is a bit of a feeling for me that this is like the Rangers team that John Gregg had. They elect too many players who are real stalwarts to the side, just carry on a year or 2 years too long. So what you actually ended up with was guys who were still capable, but you couldn't get rid of them because you had nobody else coming through. And also, these guys, you couldn't earn anything off them if you sold them. You just basically had to say, you're either pensioned off, you're retired, or we're giving you a free transfer. You know what I mean? It was the time of, Sandy Jardine and Alex McDonald and Colin Jackson, Darren Forsyth. All these guys almost hit their sell-by date at the same time. And that in itself gave Rangers so many problems around that time, because you then had to go out and sign players, and some of the players that Rangers signed to actually replace these guys might have been the best in class in Scottish football, but they were found badly lacking for a good few seasons until Souness came in.
Aye. And for me, I think you're talking about John Gregg there as well, just before he became manager. That's the one thing, I'm not for a second comparing Tav to John Gregg in terms of playing ability or whatever, the legend. But for me, there is a bit of that where, John Gregg's only managed to captain Rangers in 2 European finals. So you've only got Tav is one of a really select bunch who actually have captained the club in a European final. He basically got us there almost single-handedly with his goal-scoring feats, particularly after the group stage of the Europa League. I think it's an amazing thing. You look at his goal scoring in that run to
survive. You've got to give credit where credit's due, and I do. But there is always
I know
that wee bit that's lacking between being a legend and just being a great or a very good.
I know the thing for me, again, other things I would never compare to each other. One's very much an on-field thing, one's an off-field. But like Gregg had that thing of leading the club through. That's what his statue encompasses, the Ibrox disaster, and this is where people lost their life and what have you. It was a really dark period for the club, and for a very different reason. Obviously, Tav came in well after 2012, but he was the first guy to be captain. We're winning trophies again after 2012. But John Gregg went through this period. Obviously, he played the 66 Cup final, I think, against Celtic, Ukai Johansson replay. And then I don't think he even played when we won the League Cup, 70-71, Derek Johnson. I think it wasn't.
Ronnie McKinnon
captain that day, aye. So it went a long period where he wasn't winning a league title. I think he'd winning more trophies than Tav did. And then it was just, he's becoming the same age as Tav, kind of 76, 78, the trebles, and suddenly bulking up his number of trophies.
For Gregg, it was a Scottish Cup. The Scottish Cup in 73 was a big turning point for him in terms of captaincy. Then in 75, you had the last of the old league titles. Then you had the new Premier League and a treble in 76. And then again in 78. And it was the natural successor when Jock Wallace left, that if you were going to get something out of this guy, then or going to move him on, you weren't moving him on to move him out the door. You were moving him on to actually progress into management. And I think that bit as well, he does not have the accolade and the title as the greatest Ranger ever for nothing. And again, let's be honest, Tavernier's fantastic goal scoring record. John Gregg scored 120 goals, I think it was, for Rangers. He's for some of his Tavernier's exploits are fantastic. They are nothing compared to what we have previously seen. So I think I do wonder whether there's a mindset that Tavernier, good as he's been for Rangers, has actually been there too long.
Well, I think he's at that stage in his career. He's at that kind of age where it's like Gregg started, and if everything goes according to plan during the summer, and suddenly we do knock Celtic off the pedestal, and if Tav was there, I was kind of expecting him. Even John Gregg moving positions, same thing. He gets, to me, Tav is he's a captain, and he's part of a record breaking, a British record defensively set during the 55 season, in which he was top scorer, not in the league that was coming up, but for the whole season, a season which we did well in Europe as well. The season we won 55. I think it's quite remarkable, and it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up same stats almost, as Greg over the next couple of years, if he maybe gets a move into midfield. And that's the big thing with this chap, Dujon Sterling. He seems the kind of 23-year-old from Chelsea, come through the Chelsea Academy, still at Chelsea. He's been loaned out to Coventry, Wigan. I think spent last season at Blackpool, this season at Stoke on loan. Great reviews.
I was interested, on that, Alex. I was interested that people were saying, oh, he's gone here, he's gone. He is not going to get a game any other way at Chelsea. You've got guys in your first team squad who are getting changed on the floor because there's not enough space for you to, you're 25 or whatever it is to train. Then anybody, you look at the squad numbers at Chelsea, people don't run about with 7-8 on their back because, that's my lucky number, or that's my postcode. They've got 7-8 in their back because they're part of a setup, which means they've got so many players. So even 2 seasons ago with Chelsea, Stuart, I was like, before the American fella came in, Still Abramovich, I was looking at them, and they were the number one case when you would turn over to watch some English football, and you would think, oh, he's there. Oh, they've got him as well. Mm-hmm. Oh, that guy's playing for them, I know. And you suddenly, why are they not scoring any goals? Because they're all strikers. So now with this guy Bewley coming in, he's spending hundreds of millions in players. Absolutely ridiculous. It's there's no way anybody other than the best of the best is. Do you think he wants a second team? Do you think he must? Do you think no? A second club. No. I
think he's misunderstood the concept of a B team. He's just
Todd, we're over here.
That's it. We'll quite happily take that money, Todd. Just even half of that would do is absolutely fine. And you're absolutely right what you're saying. It's no disgrace not to be getting a game for the Chelsea first team. And he's getting rave reviews, this chap Sterling, from the kind of Stoke fans, the Blackpool fans. The only thing we know about him though is he is a right back.
Yeah. And
we're talking about Tavernier, and I've talked about maybe a move of position for Tav would let him, get into that John Gregg kind of realm of service, if not kind of legendary status. Do you think that's what's happening here, or is Tav, as you're saying, going to get? Because I'm thinking Goldson, Tav, Cantwell, and Raskin. And Raskin, it's mostly because he's just arrived. It's not necessarily in his performances. And Goldson, I saw getting his backside handed to him a few times by Duke last week. Couldn't even foul the fella right. So, like you say, it might not be as many as 4 people that are certain to be staying. So, is this the arrival of this chap? Does it mean something bad for Tav?
Yeah, just get back to Todd Bewley. We could actually convince him of named a town in the north of Scotland after him. Just I think there's a bit where, in terms of the manager, unlike previous managers, I would say even up to this, with like Souness, Walter Smith, I would say even an Advocat. Advocat was the kind of guy you could sit down with and he would explain things to you. Alex McLeish was another who would, if you asked him a question and it was there was an element of fact behind the question that he asked, he would give you a straight answer. He might say, don't write that, don't print that, whatever it is. I think there is an element of somebody's offering me a drink here. Yes, please. Yes, it was.
Always take it. Always take it.
It was. But I think there's I think in terms of Michael Beale, or Mick Beale as they call him around QPR ways, it was. I don't think there's anybody really is able to second guess him. I think I think he's very much his own man as far as that goes, because nobody's close enough to basically say to him, what about this or what about that? So there's a great many people trying to second guess him, and they might get it totally wrong. That's what I mean. Again, people are saying, well, there might be 5 or 6 or maybe 7 or 8, depending on costs and all the rest of it. It might be that he's actually holding up a completely blank bit of paper with, a reserve goalkeeper here and a reserve defender here, and and Raskin and Cantwell and the likes dotted around the place. I think it's but how you finance that, how you resource that, how you approach guys, unless they're a whole load of loan signings or a whole load of guys who are out of contract, and you know about them and you've identified them, you've already tried to entice them into that Rangers team. Is the next couple of months are going to be really interesting to see who Rangers can get without spending massively, and I mean financially, in terms of the transfer fees.
I think it's a great point regarding Beale. I think because results are going against us against Celtic just now, so it's probably steering towards criticism of him more than anything these days. I think it's becoming, he talks too much in press conferences, and I'm still to be convinced. It's still a bit of an enigma, which you would normally associate with somebody being more taciturn, but he talks a lot in press conferences. But I'm still not sure if this time next season we'll be seeing him some kind of mad professor genius. He throws a lot out there, and I think he's particularly criticised because he seems to be sending out a different message all the time about the future, the long-term future of the squad. He's been doing that since he arrived, but I can't help thinking it changes in respect of the short-term future of the team he's got. He changes that message as a way of preparing for the next game, and I think we saw that last week with Morelos.
I think there's a bit of the. I think there's a bit of the kind of Warburtons about him.
Aye.
That. Oh, what was the word I would say? The sort of orthodoxy of his thinking is not the same as what other managers have been. You could read other managers and see what their kind of philosophy was, and how they were going to achieve that. Even go back, 30 odd years ago and think about, like say, Souness knew he would need a big striker, so he brings in like Colin West. Colin West isn't up yet, through injury or other, so then he goes for Hateley. But when things were desperate and he didn't have either West or Hateley, he just shoved Big Goff up front. So it was very basic, but you could see he had a philosophy on how to try and win games. Whereas I've not witnessed that. You knew it, like Walter was really, really pragmatic. Everybody will go on about, McCoy's scoring all the goals and Hateley's scoring all the goals, and Gascoigne and his influence, and Laudrup and how good he was. I remember Walter, putting out a team at Celtic Park that had 5 centre backs, and mate, you're a centre half, but you're playing right back, or you're playing left back. Big Elvis played left back, I'm sure, at one time, and he also had another one in the midfield. So I don't think Michael Beale's as easy to read as even they were, and they had some weird, wonderful ideas as well. But I think you're right. I think in the next 6 months, this wacky professorship is really going to have to deliver some answers. Not just deliver trophies, but deliver some answers.
Well, in that vein, you're saying
your health.
You and I, cheers, sir. You and I are of a similar vintage. You remember as well as me. 37 years ago, I'm going to torture a coincidence here with the Glasgow Cup, with Rangers scoring 3 goals in the Glasgow Cup final at Ibrox midweek. Now Celtic win the title. Hearts, thanks to Hearts losing by 2-0, and 6 days later they come to Ibrox with their English goalkeeper, and they lose 3-2 to Rangers in the Glasgow Cup final, 40 odd thousand there. But that was a great night. It was a great start for Graham Souness, because that was his first Old Firm game. We're in a wild situation just now, Stuart, what we were talking about earlier. We've got a manager here, and we've had like Ek McLeish lost all 5 games, whitewashed by Celtic to 2004, but credit in the bank for what he'd achieved in the seasons before that, involving a lot of really good victories over Celtic. I don't know, but I can't remember. I've not looked into it. I've not looked this up, so feel free to let us know if I'm talking rubbish here, folks. But a manager who's failed to win, a Rangers manager failed to win his first 4 Old Firm games, and it's almost as if even if he failed to win tomorrow, he's still going into next season with the general consensus saying he's the man for the job. Is that right? I've got a funny feeling that tomorrow's game is actually the most meaningful, the most kind of important in Michael Beale's career. He needs this tomorrow like nothing else, doesn't he?
He does. He does. Every Rangers manager needs a win over Celtic, or needs to be beating Celtic, and at least point to it. You know, if Rangers win this game tomorrow, you're not suddenly going to get a Christmas DVD out of it. You know, it's not of that proportion. If it was a cup final, perhaps you would. But I think he needs a win to convince a lot of supporters. I'll tell you a question that I've heard several times over. If Van Bronckhorst can get you to a European final and win the Scottish Cup, and then get sacked 6 months later for it just not happening, where is Michael Beale's, as you say, you know, cash in the bank? He doesn't have any. He doesn't have any, even in terms of the football that Rangers have played. So he needs a result, and needs a big result. Other Rangers managers in the past have pulled out surprise, shock results, and they've lasted, you know, and it's given them not just breathing space, it's also given them a bit of time to actually create their own identity as a Rangers manager and build their own team. You know, if you think, I'm always reminded of certain Rangers managers, like, you know, Walter Smith, and the fans singing, you know, Walter Smith's Blue and White Army and all the rest of it. And you can never remember anybody singing about Alex McLeish. At least I can't. But the guy was hugely successful in terms of what he did for Rangers. So, I think slowly but surely there are a great many Rangers fans out there, die-hard Rangers supporters, you know, Rangers to the core, but their bar has come down and down and down ever since 2012. Dare I say it? It's been lowered and lowered and lowered to such an extent now where you're praising, you know, praise be to guys who wouldn't even be carrying Rangers hampers years ago. And I think, you know, Rangers need some big results against the team that is the best in Scotland, whether you like it or not.
And I think Tavernier, look at the way we were discussing him earlier, he kind of epitomises, I think, that struggle between thinking, you know, it's a poverty of ambition almost, like we're being ground down by the fact we're too used to accepting, you know, having been in the lower leagues and all that. It's made us think we you know, just getting a draw against Celtic, for example, would be enough.
I'm just looking at some of the comments here. A comment, I don't know who JD is, but it's quite pertinent. Basically saying, but has Beale had the players to make the same difference?
That's what I'm just trying to say. That's the other side of it. And that's what I'm saying. If people, you're as likely to get jumped, Celtic fans as Rangers fans as Celtic fans jumping down your throat for talking about 2012, it's now becoming, we can't use that as an excuse. But I see it as a reason, you know. And I think that's the thing, the way Beale was regarded, there is no utter uproar about the fact he's failed to win 4 Old Firm games. And it speaks of a kind of acceptance, not of defeat and not of a lack of ambition, but realism that we're going to have to come back, that we're still kind of rebuilding from 2012. And I know people are saying, we'll be in a European final, we win the league unbeaten, but that's not how it works. I was talking about this last week. When Celtic stopped us doing 10 in a row, in 98, we responded by winning 2 league titles and 3 cups in the next 2 seasons. That's exactly
responded, Alex, by spending an absolute fortune.
Aye. That's what Celtic have done to us. And in comparative terms, I think also they haven't spent the same money, obviously, that we spent back then, back in kind of 98, 99. We didn't get Advocate and like that. But, you know, in comparative terms, being solid, you know, financially for the length of time they have been compared to ourselves, and obviously having the same manager for 2 seasons in the trot, I think definitely helps them in a massive way. And Gerrard was headhunted for success.
Correct, but they you know, they fall into the same trap as Rangers. Whereas, you know, when Advocate arrived and there was money to spend, he spent it. Right at this minute in time. And Celtic are in the exact same boat here. If anybody comes in with any kind of decent money, and that means even championship clubs, these guys are gone.
Aye.
You cannot stave off not just the players' ambition, but you cannot stave off clubs, even in the English Championship, because their spending power is so much greater than what you're able to offer. If you take away Champions League football or European football, then there is nothing that Rangers can offer that a Championship side. And the other thing about Championship teams is, even in England or anywhere in England, you only need to play teams twice. You don't get that fed up looking at them 4 times a season. You're scratching your head going, I thought we played them a fortnight ago. So many players in the last 40 odd years, I know, throughout Scottish football, and that is one of the big things that has counted against Scottish football. Why are we playing these teams 4 times?
And I think with Celtic having had, doing so well under Postecoglou, not taking anything away from them, but I think that's what's happened. The Rangers support is just sitting there thinking, we're so close to them on the fields when playing these games, cut out the mistakes. If they just get a wee taste of feeling the league as a grind, where they're having to struggle through games and it's the same teams every week, we'll see how they like it. It doesn't always repeat like that, though, and that's the thing, the kind of poverty of historicism, whatever. I'll just put it out there. We'll get into the team selection quickly, folks, just in a second. But I just want to ask Stewart, I'm maybe being a bit out there. If we go to the other extreme of this not being an acceptable run in any way, we've got James Bisgrove in the background, being given kind of free rein almost by our new chairman, John Bennett. I can't help seeing it's a different situation altogether, but I can't help seeing wee echoes of when Lawrence Marlborough and Lawrence Marlborough come in, and then they brought in David Holmes. He's his kind of executive officer. He's kind of operative in chief. I remember at the time it was kind of 1985 and thinking, oh, aye, that's interesting. And then next thing, Jock Wallace was away. Graham Souness come in. I'm sitting here saying it's going to take another 10 years probably before we're finally properly back. But is James Bisgrove and John Bennett, are they sitting there thinking, no? Is there any way they're sitting thinking, if Beale doesn't win this tomorrow, we're going to get rid? Rangers have got like 3 managers in 18 months.
Oh, I
only say that because other people are leaving.
If that's what I think it might be. The approach might be, if that's what it takes, then so be it.
Mm.
Rather than treading water. And I thought Michael Beale was a good shout for the Rangers job.
Yeah.
It's taken me 6 months to actually have me scratching my head saying what exactly you're doing. You get back to that point again about the not having the players. That's fine if he doesn't have the players, but you should be able to come up with a setup, or you should be able to come up with a system that allows you to play in a particular manner that either makes you difficult to beat or means you can win games and then defend.
Aye.
And I have not seen any of that, Alex. I have not seen anything that says that's the magic formula for Michael Beale to make Rangers a success. It's almost been like guesswork. He did have a great record from his start point and the matches that he won against everybody else other than Celtic. Unfortunately, that has now gone by losing to the likes of Aberdeen. So you've lost that one. But I do wonder then if he has got really radical plans for a real shake-up of this side. I think the big disappointment would be for Rangers fans if it's been promised and it doesn't arrive, and you've got the same guys next season making the same mistakes. I honestly don't think anybody would put up with Beale or give him any sort of length in a new contract, because I think people would be that cheesed off, and ultimately that's to affect Rangers in terms of ticket sales and the likes.
I mean, you're just talking about that comment in the comment section. They're saying it's about the players that he's got to work with as well, because the fans have been so on the back of the players. They've been on the back of Ross Wilson, he's gone. The back of Stuart Robertson, he's gone. Douglas Park was getting it, he's away as well. And I'm just wondering if it gets to that stage, like you say, if he gets the players in, I don't even know I don't know. I don't think it will be tomorrow, obviously, but it'll be a really strange situation. I mean, it's not beyond. I mean, it's almost expected that Celtic don't lose tomorrow. That's what the form book would tell you.
Yeah.
But a Rangers manager doesn't win his first 5 Old Firm games. We're getting into the realms of, is he next? You know, it's.
I mean, if you think about Mark Warburton, I mean, he did okay for a spell, and then he was suddenly, if you like, dragged down by some of the signings that he made. You know, expectation, the promise of these new guys making a difference, and ultimately they didn't. And all of a sudden you've got a team full of, okay, you were working with a previous manager's squad or a previous manager's players. These guys are all your players now, and you've still not made any difference. And I think that is the kind of tipping point in terms of any manager. If you give a manager, you give any manager a budget and they go and spend the money and they don't spend it wisely, they're gone. Apart from that, is at Watford where you're going anyway, whether you get money or not. But that's the kind of that I would say that is the tipping point, and I do wonder how far into next season before that tipping point comes. And it'll be really quick and really decisive, because you've got the whole thing about qualification for European competition and where you end up in that, and the fact that Rangers need to be in Europe to be making money, and it doesn't need to be massive or a massive amount of money would help, but that being in European football, that'll be something that is budgeted. I don't believe all this, we haven't budgeted for it. Yes, you have, because you expect to be there.
Mm-hmm. Aye. And just to segue from why Michael Beale could be under more pressure than we think tomorrow, into the practicalities of how he's actually going to go about beating Celtic tomorrow. One of the things I think is mitigation for Michael Beale is the fact that so many of this squad will be leaving. And he's got to try and get a tune out of guys who've been beaten down by what's happened before he arrived, and who might not have any future at Rangers. He's saying today, the quote was that there should be a lot of excitement and energy towards this fixture from my team when he was asked about this point. And so one of the key messages from today's Auckland Howie presser was there's going to be personnel changes for tomorrow from previous Old Firm games, but Beale doesn't see any reason for that to be a hindrance. But if half the team won't be there next season, is there going to be enough commitment for tomorrow's game? I
wonder about that. Whereas, I don't want to sound this a history lesson or two old codgers basically saying it was great in our day, wasn't it?
It certainly was.
But you used to have Rangers players came from, if you like, the local community and knew what a Celtic game meant to them, and nearly you had to skip them off the pitch at times, even if they didn't have a good season. They still knew what it was about. And I do wonder if there's too many players currently at Ibrox, and there have been for maybe a couple of years, where it's just like, well, we lose to our rivals. We're played in derby games with Accrington Stanley, or we're played in derby games again for Port Vale or whoever it is. It doesn't have the same effect to them, and I do, I sometimes think there is not that element of fight or bite about Rangers in some of these games. Compared to Celtic, but then again, Celtic are playing for something they're trying to defend, which is the being the best team in Scotland. Rangers might be the best team in Scotland if they win tomorrow, but people will know actually you haven't really achieved anything. I always remember Richard Gough. Rangers beat Leeds United at Elland Road, beat them 2-1, qualified for the Champions League, and Harry Harris, who I worked with at the Mirror, Harry said to Goffey, who he knew through the Spurs connection, fantastic result there. That's you champions of Britain. You won't play many games as big as that. And Goffey said, "We've got another one on Saturday." And he went, "Do you?" He went, "Against Celtic." He went, "But that was the Battle of Britain." He went, "Think boxing, Harry. We win that title, Battle of Britain. We're holding the Lonsdale belt. If Celtic beat us on Saturday, they'll think they've got a Lonsdale belt." And it's and that kind of thinking, I think that even that kind of thinking is lacking at Rangers currently.
Yeah, first team to beat Celtic after they won the European Cup. It was always going to be us, wasn't it? That's the way it works. And as you say, Stuart, I don't know, and that's epitomised by Senor Morelos. He's definitely on his way out. You know, the manager was kind of dialing back on his comments about Morelos. Today he was dialing back on what he said about him post-match after the Aberdeen game, which does seem to have been, you know, kind of psychology, trying to get the best out of him, saying he'd performed pretty poorly when he came on as a substitute with about 25 minutes to go against Aberdeen. I think with Tillman injured now, we're definitely going to see Alfredo tomorrow. I think he's going to start the game. There's a lot of talk about his legacy this week, you know, kind of peak Alfie against peak other players. Is he going to give us a performance tomorrow? Is he a guy we can trust?
No. I'll be honest here. I think Morelos he's a kind of player you would never be able to trust. For me, anyway, because you just don't know what kind of guy he's going to turn up. And I know on social media and Twitter and likes, I said something on radio about Morelos, and had guys coming in, Rangers fans coming in. What do you mean that he's a record scorer? Well, if you play as many games as he has in Europe, or you play as many games as Rangers did on certain European runs, I mean, there were times where Rangers played more games to qualify for a tournament than they had done some seasons where they actually were in the tournament. You know, you look at you know, like say Derek Johnson. Derek Johnson, there was a season after Rangers won the Cup Winners' Cup where he didn't have any European football. Why? Because Rangers were banned. So he couldn't add to any kind of record or total that he had then. Also, the quality of the teams that Rangers were playing on a you know, you cannot say that Rangers were playing against some of the opposition that they've played in the last couple of years, from teams like Gibraltar and, you know, Fredonia and any, you know, Atlantis and any other place they want to come from. I mean, be honest here. If you're going to start, and okay, you do tally these goals up, but there's no a tariff or a coefficient that basically says, oh, these you need to score 4 goals against Lincoln Red Imps or whoever it might be to make up for one against Galatasaray or whatever it is. So I've never quite bought that. His disciplinary record always meant he was like a dog that bit you once. Do you trust it again? No. When his head was you know, in the game and he was switched on. You go back to the run that Rangers made to the Europa League final. There were some of the games that Morelos played there where he was absolutely impeccable in terms of his behaviour and in terms of his holding up play, goals that he scored. He was a handful. Some really good defenders could not contain him or control him. And that's how good he was. But the next week he would come out against Motherwell and wouldn't be able to kick his arse. Do you know what I mean? And it's that up, down, that you just cannot legislate for. Would I start him tomorrow? I don't think Michael Beale's in a position not to start him because he doesn't have anybody else. It's not as if he can, you know, call somebody from the reserves, because if you see who the reserves are, you know, how they're performing, there isn't anybody in there with a record of scoring like 50 goals in 25 games or anything like that. So that's a thing of the past as well. So he might be the default setting simply because there is no other option.
And I have to say, I mean, I do love Alfie, but I love him in that way that, you know, as I said before, you love a wee kind of spoilt toddler with the big chubby cheeks as well. You know, you could bring their neck when they're running about the house wrecking the place, but you love the bits when they perform. And this idea that he's ever been all good or all bad, you know, as you say, when he was at his peak scoring form, he was as liable to get sent off then as well and kind of sell the jerseys. In the last couple of months, I've been so, as I was saying to Craig a couple of weeks ago in the preview pod, I've actually been kind of institutionalised by him, where I was kind of praising him for not getting sent off at Parkhead because he got a perfectly good goal disallowed. And I was thinking, that's how bad things have got. I'm actually just looking up these days and thinking, oh, he's okay, because it doesn't look like he's going to get sent off because he's not interested.
But that's the whole point. Exactly. I was going to make that point. I did wonder whether it was just like, you know, that Alan Partridge gif that everybody uses when he goes like that, he goes, you know, so what? I did wonder if that was his mindset at that point in time. It's like, no use fighting. You know, why do myself, why get sent off and get fined? Just accept it. You just soldier on.
Aye. Well, we've got Robbie McCrory in goals tomorrow, and he's the last Rangers goalkeeper to keep a clean sheet against Celtic. We don't have Don Robertson as referee, and he was absolutely, I think he was quite lenient. Hampden let us get steamed in about them. Steve McLean at least isn't going to be as bad as our friend Mr. Clancy. And of course, we've got the entire crowd tomorrow, but that's for the first time since nearly 30 years ago. But the last time that happened, we drew, and I've got Frankie telling me better wrap it up, because as usual with Mr. Stewart Weir, I could sit here and talk about Rangers all night. And if he's getting a drink in, I want to get one in as well. We'll be carrying on this conversation offline, folks. But just quickly, a score prediction, Stuart.
I think it'll be a draw, one each. One each.
Okay. Listen, sir, absolute pleasure. Really, absolutely loved it. Folks, I will be outside with Mr. Colin Armstrong tomorrow outside Ibrox after the game. A bit of post-match, immediate post-match reaction. Hopefully it's nice and cheery. And
after whatever 42 happens, minutes.
For 42. I will cut that one down just to the 2 hours. And we'll have Colin, Ross and John will be back at 9:30 for the flagship show on Sunday night to give it a proper review. Thanks very much, Stuart. Absolute pleasure, mate. Thanks to Frankie for producing the whole show, and thanks to you folks. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. Good night.